It's a tough job. I would think that it has probably gotten a lot tougher first through the pandemic, and certainly over the last few months as we sort of transition into whatever this economy is trying to transition to, monetary policy, economic policy, and just all of the market volatility. I'll just start with you, Barbara. I mean, how have you adjusted to that?
Well, I will say you actually have two pretty new CFOs on stage.
Yep.
So I just stepped into the CFO role at Workday in February. So I can't compare to the pandemic, but there is no lack of uncertainty today in the economy. So I mean, really preparing for it is we're dusting off a lot of different scenario models, but I think the biggest thing is how do you stay calm and make sure that the entire organization around you stays calm too.
Chryssa?
Same for us. We're looking at all of our scenario planning, trying to really think about different ways that the economy could go and think about what we would do. You know, if you start with a plan, it's never going to be what you think it's going to be, but at least then you have something to, a playbook to start with as you think about how you're going to move forward.
How flexible have you been in this situation then? Or have you had to be, more importantly?
Yeah, for us right now, the economy is moving quickly, where you're looking at liquidity one day. Interest rates, have gone up faster than, we've seen since before the financial crisis. So, every day is something new, and, we're just, kind of focusing in on what it looks like and reacting, the best we can.
Barbara?
Yeah, I think it's really, when we're doing our scenario planning, there's lots of different levers. It's really understanding what are those key drivers, paying attention to those, making sure we kind of understand the different inputs and outputs. And for us, it's really figuring out what are the key levers. We're very headcount driven, so it's always going to come down to hiring.
Talk about kind of the strategic role that I think CFOs have taken on. And we should point out this, of course, and as I'm sure everyone in this room knows, it's been a relatively long process. You go back to the 80s and how the role changed back then during the M&A boom and, of course, during the tech boom in the 90s. But it's really accelerated over the last few years. And I'm curious as to, A, why, and two, how exactly did you end up in this job? And is that strategic role, was that the selling point when you came in?
Yeah, I mean, you kind of started it off with the question on, what's happening and everything that's going on in the economy. And I think just all the uncertainty that we're going through, market volatility, you've got customer behavior changes, digitization across the board. So I think business leaders are really looking for CFOs to be more strategic, drive insights around operational change, guide business strategy, and really create value for the company. It's changed to be like from a finance role to this enterprise-wide role. And I think, being a brand new CFO, the CFOs that I'm looking up to are the ones that are increasing their focus on value creation. They are embracing technology to figure out what they want to do with all their data, and then rethinking talent as well.
What does value creation mean? I mean, that's not just accounting and cutting costs, is it?
I think value creation goes beyond the financial statements.
Right.
I mean, you've got the financial statements. It's all that intangible value that creates your market capitalization.
Chryssa?
Yeah, I think you started with why the changes. I think there's been so much innovation in the finance space that CFOs, the numbers have become table stakes, but it is a good background for making business decisions. But we now have time freed up and kind of a bird's eye view into what the business is doing, and you have to collaborate more. We're working on more diverse projects. It's not just a finance person, whether or not you could be focused on ESG, modeling, analytics. So you have to become become more of a business person these days and really understand things more broadly. But you still bring the finance skills with you when you're making business decisions for the company. And I think that's really, how we've evolved in the CFO space.
So for future CFOs, the younger people who are heading into college or grad school right now, is the path to that job still through the traditional finance program, or do they need something broader in order to get them there?
I mean, I think it's through finance, but it's also getting that business lens. So like for me, for example, before I took the CFO role, I actually went into the business. I'd been in finance my entire career, and at Workday, we feel strongly like to be in the CFO seat, you have to have a good understanding of the business. So I went and ran a product organization. The CFO before me that was in this seat, she went and helped start out our international expansion. So I think there's lots of different ways, but I think it is becoming increasingly important to have that business mindset that's broader than just financials.
Chryssa, does the CEO come to you for those broader strategic things? Do you go to him, or, I mean, what's the driver there that gets you to that role?
Yeah, I think, we're working collectively as a team. The strategy group sits underneath me. We're working on a 3-year strategy refresh right now. And, we are looking at what's going on in the market as we go through that, understanding what partners, what's happening in the fintech space, thinking about those things. The other thing that I would add, you asked about, the path to CFO. I didn't spend any time specifically in the business, but I spent a lot of time in transformation and a lot of digital transformation. And I do think CFOs in the future really need to have a good understanding of data and analytics. And you can start with a core, but I don't think you have to have a finance degree to become a CFO, but you will have to learn and become conversant in the finance, because it is table stakes. That's the first thing that you're responsible for earnings for the company, and that's something that's core.
And that data and analytics focus, is that the same for you, Barbara?
Yeah, it absolutely is. I think, digital transformation, it's everywhere. It's across the entire organization. It's not just in finance. And I think it's really important in the CFO seat, not just to have a view of transformation within finance, but how you can partner with IT to drive transformation across the organization.
And what do you use that data for, specifically in terms of making decisions? I mean, I know it gives you sort of an overall lay of the land, but how do you sort of parse that out? I mean, you're not just running Excel spreadsheets. This is a lot more complicated than what it used to be.
I mean, we use data all the time to make decisions. I mean, we use it to do portfolio planning, how we're thinking about our next investment. It informs how all of our different scenario plans.
Is it better to have that run internally, or do you rely on third parties to kind of help out with that?
We rely on it, internally. We have our own systems. We've created an intelligent data foundation that actually, within finance, allows us to pull data from operational systems, automate our accounting, at the same time leverage that data to do reporting, analytics, and to inform our planning models too.
What about you, Chryssa?
Yeah, I'd say the same, and then I would add to that, that informs pricing, customer segmentation. We're doing a lot of analytics, projecting future credit losses, anticipating what could happen with, the guarantee of our mortgage loans, and that's the business that we're in. We're really, an insurance company, at the heart of everything, and so, we're making really good decisions based on the data and the models that we're using today.
You said the strategy team sits under you. Is that becoming more common industry-wide, and not just in your industry, but the broader industries as well?
Yeah, I think, that's something that's evolved in the last 5 to 10 years. I think that's much more commonplace for it to sit. And, the CFO is usually the right-hand person of the CEO. And, as I mentioned, you really do have a bird's eye view of the full company. Our old CFO used to call, that position position or the finance organization deliver, because everything has to run through, and you really get to see everything.
Can't drink too much.
No.
I mean, no disrespect to Hugh, but then that sounds a lot like being the CEO as well.
Well, the CEO, I think, is spending, a lot more time on strategy, and we are informing the CEO with some of the data and the analytics, providing the financial background to support their decision making. I think we're the right-hand person, but a CEO is really, thinking about, it's an idea person is how I would describe it.
The visionary.
Yeah. How do you manage the people under you, Barbara, in that regard, particularly with that focus on data, that focus on being nimble, being agile, particularly in a volatile world, volatile economy?
I mean, I really think it's all about creating the vision of where you're trying to go, enabling people, making sure they have the tools, the technology, and the talent, and then letting them kind of set their path and course. So really just trying to give people enough rope to, go and achieve what their objectives are and meet the vision of the organization.
But does your job, though, in that regard, does it become more operational? Does it become a little bit more managerial in that sense?
I mean, I think the CFO role is you have a team, and you really, for me, I'm looking to those leaders to really run finance so that I can elevate in the CFO role and really being partnering across the enterprise. So there's a piece of my job where my hat is running the function, but getting the right leaders in place that can really run that day to day so that I can spend more of my time really partnering with the different leaders across the organization and driving the business.
And getting help, Chryssa, having folks on your team, whether they're directly in finance or whether they're on that strategy team, particularly bringing new folks in to the company here. What is the need for that, the demand for that, and the availability for it?
Yeah, I think we like to have a good mix of internal and externally. We're hiring from both internal and external folks, and it's having a deep understanding of the business to run strategy, but then the discipline of how to create strategy and think about everything that you need to understand across an industry and with customers and how you go forward. Both of those things are important. We have a new head of strategy that we put in place, in the last year, and this person came from the business side, but really has a deep understanding of how you think about creating strategy and looking out 3 to 5 years. But it's a good mix of people.
Barbara,
And I was just going to say on the strategy thing, I think the one thing we're really focused on, our strategy does not roll up into finance. We actually have a chief strategy officer that reports to the CEO, but they're creating strategy. And then within my finance team, I've got an FP&A or business finance team that's doing the operational planning, really partnering with the business, but I have a strategic planning function. And the piece that we're really focused on is making sure that we can connect that strategy to our strategic financial plan that then connects and aligns with what we're driving in terms of the operational plans and the business. A lot of times that's all disconnected. We've got folks, I don't know if anyone is nodding or saying yes, but you've got folks doing strategy. We're trying to meet financial goals and milestones, and it's just how do we better align and connect that, and then making sure that that's what we're driving operationally in the business. Easier said than done sometimes, but it's definitely something we're working through, trying to get better at.
You started off earlier pointing out that fairly new to the job.
Yes.
Is there anything that you can share that maybe you wish you had known before you took the job that you now know today?
Wow.
These are the hard-hitting questions I told you already.
Yeah, like all the marketing activities we do as CFOs. That's. I wish I would known how much time we spend. No. That's a tough one. Let me think about
You know,
it.
I can chime in. You know, there are probably a lot of things I wish I knew. The first thing I did learn was you shouldn't become the CFO in December, right before year end. That was not wise of me. But you know, there is also, at least in our organization, a lot of administration, and I think that was part of the surprise for me. You know, one of the things I would say is, you know, you're now on a team that, you know, you're not just thinking about your own division or your own organization, but you really need to think as, you know, an owner of, you know, the entire organization. And it's a little bit of a mind shift, not to just think in your silo, but to really, really think broadly. But you know, there's just a lot of governance and administration that, you know, we make sure that we're, you know, safe and sound and controlled, and it takes a lot of your time on top of all the other demands that are required of a CFO.
I would second that, and just it's the stuff that nobody says, hey, great job, right?
Yeah.
It's the stuff that you don't want anyone to know about because it's just running. I'll answer it in terms of, you know,
You're ready to answer now?
Yeah, I'm ready to answer it. Can I answer it now? At one point in time, we had thought about, you know, me moving into that seat earlier, but it was COVID. We're like, oh, we can't change out the CFO during COVID, and so I wish I would have known we were going into a big macro change. That would have been nice to know ahead of time.
Well, let's just talk about that too, because people look at the economy and they see real structural changes going on globally right now, things that aren't transitory, if you will. And I'm curious, as you come up with ideas for how to navigate your company and you propose them to the CEO or the board or whoever here, I mean, what's the message, the broader message that you have to get across? The idea of how to implement these changes and how to make them not just successful, but really to make them lasting for the company in a positive way. And I'll start with you, Chryssa.
Yeah, I think, you know, you really are, there are a bunch of things, you know, I think, you know, you want to, most CFOs are focused on growth. For us, we're also looking at the core and making sure we're as efficient as possible right now, that we are prepared. We talk about scenarios. Like I said, you know, you're never going to be prepared. There's something unknown that is going to happen. If you can prepare the best that you can, hopefully you won't be too surprised about what's coming up. I think, you know, that's one thing that, you know, we're really, really talking about right now.
Yeah, very similar here. I think the only other thing I would add to that is, you know, we took the opportunity to raise debt in March. So looking at capital allocation, making sure, you know, you have a very solid balance sheet. Very happy that we did that in March versus trying to do that right now.
We only have a couple minutes left, but I am curious about the idea of the pushback, right? I mean, sort of, I think kind of one of the traditional stereotypes of CFOs is sort of the Dr. No, that basically they're the people that say no to everything. And I know with the sort of strategy roles and the operational roles that has had to, I would think it would have had to shift to the point where it's less about saying no and more about saying what?
Maybe.
Maybe? Okay. Yes or?
Go slow or no.
Go slow or no.
You're going to go, you're going to slow, or it's a no. It's one of the three.
And I think it goes back to data. So like, let's make decisions with data. So data-driven decision making. I think it's easier to say yes if everyone's done the homework in terms of the data.
This may be a dumb question. That obviously makes a lot of sense for a software company. It makes a lot of sense for a finance company. What about companies outside maybe the traditional sphere of what we would think as data-driven companies? Does it work there?
I think data powers all businesses. So I don't know what, give me an example.
Oh, give you an example. I don't know. Let's take something like, I don't know. Well, okay, I was going to say retail.
I mean, there's always going to be
but then I thought about it, and I
decisions.
think that's all.
I think there's always going to be a little bit of gut decisions, but you've got to have some sort of data to inform it.
But there are a lot of CEOs and a lot of executives out there that would say, okay, you know, I do it from the gut, and this is what works. And you know, I guess it depends on the size of your company and what industry you're in. But when you have a boss who maybe thinks like that, how do you then steer him or her to a more data-driven approach, if at all, or not?
Yeah, I think there's data, but there, there can be other reasons to go forward with a project. It could be related to reputation or, some other angle that you're considering in your strategy. Data, it is a great basis or start or foundation for how you make decisions. But then you are thinking about other things as you move forward. You're interested in certain customers or certain segments, or you want to go sideways, and it might be the CEO's intuition what they really want to move forward with, and then it will be up to us to execute.